Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Okay Now What? We have a full panel. We have everyone here. We got Robin, we got Thomas, we got Jason, we got Elizabeth, and we got me, Greg. And yeah, so let's go on and get on with today's show. So for months, ever since going back all the way, I believe September, if I'm wrong, please correct me, Robin, but there have been protests with the farmers in India. Basically, India was pushing a more neoliberal legislation towards the farmers. Robin, you know more about the story. Can you give us some more details on what's been happening lately in India?
For sure. So in India, about the population of the US is protesting in India. So around like 250 million people are protesting these three new farm bills that the government passed undemocratically and unconstitutionally. They pushed these bills through without a consensus, without discussing it with major stakeholders. They did it with a voice vote, so people were calling in to vote rather than doing an in-person vote. They didn't allow any opposition to make comments or discuss this further. They pushed their really they rammed it through Congress. And so farmers have been on a small scale been protesting since August, and then in September they decided, enough's enough. They're going to exercise their right to protest in the capital of India at Delhi. So they were going to Delhi. They weren't allowed in. They were barricaded on the borders. When they were making their way to Delhi, they were tear gassed. They faced police brutality. They were water cannoned. And yeah, so they've been protesting for a while. The last time, Greg, when I was on your protest, we discussed all of this in length. But since then, there have been major human rights abuses and major events where Modi's government has been jailing journalists. They're shutting off electricity. They're shutting the internet. They're shutting water access, bathroom access, anything to make sure that these protests die or are cast in a bad light.
Mm-hmm.
They're calling protesters terrorists, anti-nationals, and all of that, the stuff we know that a government will do to a protest if it's against corporate interests.
Mm-hmm.
And these three bills, they would allow corporations to stockpile. They would allow them to set market price. They would basically be buying out the market, and small farmers who own less than 2 acres of land would be forced to either sell their land or go deeper into debt.
Wow.
So it's just another part of Modi's regime where it's selling out to corporate interests. He's sold out so many other industries, from trains to from the railroad system to transportation within cities. He sold it to corporate interests. Agriculture is just another way for him to please his campaign donors, his corporate supporters. And it's not the first time where he's committed human rights abuses. In Kashmir, he's been suppressing voices. They're on, I think, a couple of months, if not a year, of full-on living under a police state. He's passed anti-Muslim bills. He was banned from the US for a couple of years because he committed human rights abuses against Muslims.
I recall that it wasn't until the Trump administration welcomed him back, I believe. Is that correct?
Somewhat. I think it was just before Trump. It was when he became prime minister where the US government had to let him come back because he was a leader of a democratic state. So he's committed human rights abuses. Farmers, there's been a couple of cases where activists who are detained, they faced physical and sexual abuse. One known person was Nodeep Kaur. She's a Dalit, which is a lower caste activist who was detained. She was just released today, I believe. And she faced physical and sexual torture at the hands of the police. There's several other journalists who were arrested, whose cameras were broken as they were reporting what's happening live at the streets. Activists are being detained. Individuals like Rihanna, Mina Harris, Greta Thunberg are being called not anti-nationalist, but like anti-Indian or against Indian's government, where foreign agents are trying to infiltrate. That's sort of like the propaganda that's going around. They're burning pictures of Rihanna, Mina Harris, and Greta Thunberg. And I believe Mina Harris has talked about, like, ever since she's spoken out, she's been getting like rape threats and like all of these like threats against her for supporting the farmers. And it's
Robin,
just,
when you say they, who are the they in this who are burning those pictures?
Hindu nationalists.
Okay, so what's it called? The
BJP?
BJC. That's what I'm talking. So that's Modi's party, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
Modi's party. They're sort of Hindu nationalists.
Right. What is their sort of population strength? What is the size? I mean, are they a majority, or are they a majority within a coalition? How does that work in Indian politics there?
So it is a parliament. I don't know if they're the ruling party. I'm pretty sure they are. They have a strong foothold. Modi started his campaign with the promises of, like, you know, we're going to support the farmers. We're going to do all of this. We're going to make sure that everyone, like, you know, we're bettering the lives. But as we've seen, he's not listening. Negotiations have been a fail because farmers have been really clear and the unions have been really clear. They're not going to settle for anything less but a full repeal of 3 bills.
So where's this going to go?
It's not going to end. It's not going to end. January 26th was Republic Day, where, you know, we saw mass police brutality. It's where journalists were being arrested. It's where people were being kidnapped and disappeared off the streets. There's some, like, I think it was like 100 or 200 activists are missing. They don't know where they are, and my community is very afraid that 1984 tactics are being used of disappearing activists, and Delhi police isn't letting people know who they have in their jails. So and Modi and Amit Shah, they've been calling for more police brutality. If not, their supporters have been saying, like, oh, we're going to do a repeat of 84, which was a Sikh genocide where people were being killed on a mass level. So, and it's not going to end. Farmers, you know, these farmers, they're not young, they're elderly. They've seen the partition, they've seen 84. They're not scared of dying for this cause. More people are coming. Some villages have stated that at least 2 people from every household, or at least 1 person from every household, will be going to Delhi. And it's not that they don't have supplies. Villages are sending trucks full of grain, sustenance. There's organizations like Khalsa Aid who are providing water, who are providing tents, who are providing healthcare. There's a new doctor from New Jersey who left to go to India, and he has a clinic, and he's making sure farmers are receiving meds if they've been injured, if they've faced police brutality, they're being treated, they're getting medication. So they have malls within these camps too. They're not going anywhere until these bills are repealed.
That makes me feel very, I guess, optimistic, you know, that you mentioned that. But it's just, you know, it's so funny because, you know, this leader was banned from the United States, and all of a sudden he is allowed because, like you mentioned earlier, he is the leader of a democratic state that does this to its people. And I mean, hell, we do it ourselves as well. And it's sad that, you know, our government just lets this pass. This should be on national news.
It definitely should be. I know there's been some traction. But Rihanna's tweet blew it wide open. It led to other celebrities and NBA players, NFL players tweeting about it. Some of them donated a couple of $1,000 or 10 grand to farmers, and people are still tweeting about it. It's not something that's gonna die down just because, you know, we've seen this happen before in India. And we really want to make sure that India knows it's not 84. It's not a time where they could just get away with this and like through a media blackout. There's Twitter, there's independent journalists, and all of that.
Is there an expectation on the side of the farmers and the activists and the people who are being abused by the nationalists? Is there an expectation of any kind of outside intervention, whatever it might be? And I am not a supporter of outside intervention, regime change, but any expectation of some sort of multilateral coalition that would be stepping in to help the people, or do they pretty much feel like they are on their own?
I don't want to speak for them just because I'm not on the ground. I've been just following through, my family's been following through media. We've been following through like independent journalists. We've been listening to our families in India. But in my opinion, I don't think they're expecting the US to be like, hey, repeal the bills, or like the UN. The UN has been tracking this. I know Amnesty International has been tracking this. The world, there's an organization, I'm forgetting the exact name, but the Human Rights Council is looking into this. But they're not expecting the US or like the UK or like Security Council to like step in and be like,
India is a huge trading partner.
Yeah. But US representatives have been talking about this. Like, I know they sent a letter to the ambassador saying like, human rights abuses should not be happening. There shouldn't be a media blackout. There should be electricity. They should have access to water. I know Ro Khanna has spoken about this, Jim Costa, John Garamendi, and several others. The Sikh Coalition of the US is doing great work on making sure that people are talking about this, that letters are being sent to representatives, senators. But there's a huge population within the US who are supporters of the BJP. Like Modi came to a Howdy Modi event in Texas where his supporters were gathered. He did a tour of the Silicon Valley. He was invited to speak on the floor. So there are supporters of him who are in the US who are donating to these representatives who are, where they aren't speaking about it. Like my congressman isn't talking about it, and he's a known Modi supporter.
Mine either.
Well, yeah, but
we've
been doing letters. If you want to help, send the letters, speak about it, use your platforms, and then send letters. Call in, send letters, email your representatives. And Fresno, Madera, and I think Seattle too, they passed a resolution in support of the farmers. So doing stuff like that is very important. But for more information, you guys can follow my account. I know I've done like a couple of highlights on this.
Go ahead and shout out your social media.
It's Robin Rahil, ROBINRAHIL. And there's I also post about like different accounts you can follow to stay more updated on this. But if you guys have any more questions, I can answer those too. To the best of my ability.
If any of y'all are watching, please go ahead and check her out. Check out our co-host Robin's social media. She covers this on a daily basis. Let's go ahead and move on to some news at home. So according to Biden, the $15 minimum wage won't make it into the $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief bill. So Democratic lawmakers were trying to we're pushing to increase the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour, but that may have been wishful, I guess, thinking, because the Senate parliamentarian Elizabeth McDonough, is it McDonough? On Thursday ruled against passing the minimum wage legislation through reconciliation. Now, this is literally the first time in 4 years I've ever heard about this Senate parliamentarian. I found out that this person isn't even an elected official, and it's just an advisory for the Senate. And it takes one person, the Vice President of the United States, to overrule this person.
Yeah.
Someone who had campaigned for a $15 minimum wage during her presidential campaign.
Yeah.
Anyone, go ahead and tell me your thoughts on this.
Just go on, Jason.
Go ahead, Thomas. Okay. So, I mean, the Democratic Party is failing in both houses right now. Even the American Recovery Act is that what it's called? I forget what it's called in the House.
Yeah.
You know, they are talking about $15, but they're talking about it in 5 years. You know, and we don't need $15 in 5 years. We need $15 now. In fact, we need $20 now. In fact, we actually need $25 now. So this idea that it would even be satisfactory to put $15 off for another 5 years is ludicrous. But then you go to the Senate, and you know, if you have tracked the way the Republicans do things, the Republican Party does not put up with this nonsense, right? In 2001, the Senate parliamentarian disagreed with what Bush wanted to do with the big tax cuts. And the Senate parliamentarian said, you know what, this is not really something that we can do through the process that we have at hand right now. And what they did was they fired that parliamentarian. And got somebody in there who wanted to rule in their favor. So the idea that this parliamentarian has any authority whatsoever is absolutely ludicrous. And so for those of us in my position, what I have been saying here, one, Kamala Harris could, in the Senate at the very least, push this through with the stroke of a pen, the bang of a gavel, whatever it is. It is entirely her decision. Okay. Match it up with what's going on in the House, and you see that the Democrats don't really have a plan to get us an increased minimum wage as it is. And you know, that's where they're at. And this is just another one of those things that we have talked about week after week after week, where you think, what is the voting going to be like in 2022? And are the Democrats going to be able to hold on to the House or the Senate? And if they can't manage this thing right here, that is going to get something to people who are in desperate need of it, 27 million people right now on a minimum wage looking for a wage increase, they're going to pay at the ballot box. I wish they would understand that they are going to pay at the ballot box.
That's true. That's what I have to say. Elizabeth, go ahead.
Yeah, so Jason, you made a lot of great points. I didn't know about this parliamentary body either until this happened. I just really hate that when people create policy, they equate large businesses with small businesses. And like Jason said, you know, they're talking about implementing it in 2025. They're not even talking about implementing it today. So like, what's that senator?
Manchin?
Yes. He's talking about how he's talking about how it would be really bad for small businesses if we were to pass this legislation or to include it into the relief package. Well, first of all, that's a lie, because it wouldn't start tomorrow. It would start in 2025. And then roll out a policy that holds small businesses and corporations to different standards. That's what the state of California does. They have, you know, if you have more than 50 employees, you have to meet the $15 minimum wage. If you have less than 15, well, then your time frame is extended. Why can't we do something like that? And I hate that they keep, you know, kind of like saying small businesses are going to hurt. Well, then create a safeguard to protect small businesses. Okay.
Subsidize those wages. Subsidize.
Yeah, subsidize.
You know, why not for
Subsidize
small
them.
businesses?
Imagine that. Imagine doing multiple things at the same time. Anyone else want to give their thoughts on this before we move on?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, this. I mean, the whole time, the whole Biden presidency, everything that needs to get done, their response has been, you know, we need to do this. We need to do this the right way, or we need to do it like, you know, like he doesn't want to do anything by executive order. He wants to do it through Congress. He feels like he doesn't have the right to do it, even though we know he has the right to do it. And so they just don't want to actually govern like when the Republicans are in power. They just don't want to do
Yeah.
anything. They don't want to wield the power that they have, or to just refuse to do it on the basis that it's not supposedly good optics. You know, the reality is people will see this and go, well, why the hell can the Republicans just, like you said, why the hell can the Republicans just do whatever they want every single time, but the Democrats just hamstring themselves for no reason whatsoever? And I think I tweeted out that we need to start discussing this as a Harris-Biden administration. Like, Harris is very much a part of this. She very much is involved in these situations, and she could just come out and, you know, help push these things through, but she's just unwilling to do it. And so we need to really, you know, if we're looking at, okay, the likelihood is that Harris will probably run as a, you know, if Biden drops out in 2024, Harris is going to be Harris is going to.
Oh yeah.
She's going to run. So we need to, as progressives, we need to make sure that whatever happens in this administration, that Harris is very much a part of this. Like, she's very much involved in what's going on. Because if we don't, you know, it's just the messaging is going to be, oh, well, it was Biden. You know, Harris is going to be much better. She's not going to, you know.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I do recall it was a CNN interview with both of them, and Joe Biden had said Kamala Harris is going to be my final decision maker. So you are very, you're right on the spot on that, because yeah, she has just as much to do with everything than Biden does. Now,
if I can quick close out this
segment, go ahead.
If we're, you know, one of the things that this really draws into focus for, is it should draw into focus for everybody, is the Democratic Party is simply the other corporate party. You know, if the Democratic Party was really the party of the working class, they would not care about, you know, appeasing their corporate donors. They would not worry. I mean, what you have is a Republican Party that is fully corporate, and a Democratic Party that is mostly corporate, still isn't going to do much for the working class, although at least they're going to say there's something. I mean, I don't want to get into, like, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are the same. They're not the same. Different people are in the two parties. But when it comes down to these economic issues that affect the working class, affect minority communities, the parties are not that much different, simply in the sense that neither of them are going to really go out of their way to help people. I mean, I think that's what we've got to come to terms with.
Yeah, very good. And and I mean, let's just say that the Biden administration doesn't treat, you know, helping the working class. That's not its only thing that it I guess mirrors the Republican Party, because this week the Biden administration reopened a Trump era detention site for migrant children. The detention center was a reconverted camp for oil field workers in Texas, and it's expected to hold 700 children between the ages of 13 and 17, and dozens of kids have already arrived there. Now, what the hell? You campaign on, you say that was part of your day one policies of stopping the kids in cages. Kids are still in cages. What the hell, guys? Robin, do you have anything to say on this?
Just that they're gonna be in the shock in 2022 when they lose, and they're gonna be like, oh my god, why did we lose? Surprise Pikachu face. And it's gonna be because, you know, they don't follow through on their word. And it's not even that it's not that they're trying and failing, it's they're not trying. Georgia didn't flip blue because they wanted Biden to be president. They flipped Georgia blue because they wanted $15. They wanted their student loan to be forgiven. They wanted everything that they were saying and they were promising and all those right words, but they're just not doing what they should do, because, like Jason and Thomas and Elizabeth said, because of optics. And that's my main issue with the Democrats, is that they always focus on the optics and the political right thing instead of just the right thing to do. And the right thing to do is to fight for $15 an hour. The right thing to do is to push. And if you got those votes by promising $15 an hour, by promising student loan forgiveness, by promising all these progressive things, and you're rolling back on it, it's just shameful. I'm not going to be shocked in 2022 when all of these people lose and we don't have control over Senate or House just because we were ineffective. And that's all I have to say.
Yeah. What do you think, Elizabeth?
Yeah, it's just very frustrating because, like Robin said, the party, Joe Biden won because they were proposing big ideas, and they're not delivering what they're supposed to be delivering, but they are delivering on these other things that are not, in my opinion, not only are they the right thing to do, but when you disregard them and you don't do them, it could be politically damaged, like Robin mentioned, in 2022, when right now we have the majority, we control all government, and we're not, delivering survival checks. Like, where are they? Are they going to create a tax
February
credit?
26th, y'all. We're still got no checks.
I'm just really sad that we are, using our resources to open up these camps or these detention centers. I don't know if you guys are familiar from what was the thing that prior administration used to do when minors would arrive at the border. I'm not sure if this was the law, but I do come from mixed status family. And it was always my understanding, if minors came to the United States, they would, be put into a database, and then they would be released to a family member that's here in the US. And to me, that sounds like the humane thing to do. So again, I'm not sure what is their justification to put children into these camps.
Yeah, my understanding is that they would seek foster homes for them, but a couple of things, outside of any family ties that they may be able to find for them, to have an unaccompanied minor. But a couple of things that are really concerning about this is, one, the companies that they are hiring to run these camps are absolutely rife with human rights abuses going back years and years and years. This company, BCFS, in Texas, has logged at least 80 human rights violations, and we're talking about abuse. We're also talking about sexual inappropriateness and with these younger children, and they're paying this is sort of a government contract deal. They're paying $750 a day to this company for each of these children. Why are we not housing these kids, in a motel, right? People aren't using motels. Let's say we'll sanction, some motels for this, and we'll make sure that they have, that they're not kept in camp situations, sort of more like concentration camp situations, and more like in a reasonable housing situation. I think that's what people want. And the other thing that we have to realize is that our immigration system is woefully underfunded and understaffed, and a lot of that does have to do with the Republicans not putting the judges and the immigration courts and funding that department. And so Biden really needs to get his butt in gear with getting the immigration department so that the people who are coming, who have that due process coming to them, as a right of asylum, that they have that due process coming to them, that they are processed fairly, humanely, and justly.
Thomas, you want to finish us off?
Yeah, I was going to say there's a lot of manufacturing consent going on right now. The media has completely switched its wording from kids in cages to migrant facilities.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's really it really is quite disgusting. I will say that you're right, Jason, where the America already has a sheltering program, for American kids. And why do we need a completely separate institution that, you're right, has so many human rights abusers? I mean, a point an example what's happening in Texas. Children were literally complaining about the cold, and then ICE officers literally got fans out and started blowing cold air on them. Like, that's literally what they've been doing, like in these facilities. Yeah, I'm sorry, but ICE should be abolished. This thing should not exist. These
Borders
camps
shouldn't even exist.
these camps are literally just someone put a sticker over it going smiley face, yeah, it's all good now, don't worry about it. And there are far too many people that have just, they obviously just don't care. They don't care now that it's a Democratic administration.
There's a lot of justification from Democrats. I think the left is really up in arms in this, but the people who were like, we want Biden in because just Biden is better than Trump, and they're not analyzing things beyond that. They are really justifying, like, now that Biden's doing it, it's okay. Well, what do you expect him to do? What would you rather he did? Rather than saying, you as Thomas said, you've got the same program, you just, painted it a prettier color,
Yeah.
Exactly. Sorry, just wanted to add in. I saw on Twitter where Meghan McCain and the press secretary were going at it, and the press secretary.
Oh, she only cares because, yeah, go ahead. I know exactly what you're talking about. I hate this.
The press secretary was saying that, hey, like, these centers have, like, more comfortable beds. They have, like, basketball things. It's more COVID safe. And I was just thinking, but they're still in cages. And I feel like when everyone was up in arms during the Trump administration, it was like, where's that energy? Do y'all think, like, this is okay? Like, it's still not okay. No kids in cages under Biden, no kids under cages under Trump, no kids in cages, period.
Exactly.
Like, there's it's just disgusting. And I'm so disappointed in
happening like that.
In Democrats who are saying, like, no, it's okay. Like, look, we're treating them more humanely. But the humane thing to do is reunite them with their parents, reunite them with their families. Like, it's not that hard to do. Like, you have the records, you know who their parents are, you know what you need to do. You're choosing not to do this. It's not like, oh, we can't, like, there's this or that. It's like, no, you're choosing to do this. You're choosing not to do the right thing. You're choosing to cover it up, as Thomas said, with the smiley sticker face instead of doing the right thing. It's disgusting.
All right. And so, since it is the last Friday of February, which is also Black History Month, we're going to shout out two figures. So Jason and I are going to present this week. I'm going to go ahead and present Harriet Tubman, because there is a lot. Everyone knows that she, made several trips down south to, free some slaves. But when the Civil War began, Tubman did work for the Union Army, first as a cook and a nurse, and then a scout and a spy. Okay. She is technically the first woman to serve in the U.S. Army and the first Black woman. She went ahead and led an expedition in the war, and she guided a raid at Combahee Ferry, and she liberated more than 700 enslaved people. And after the war, she went ahead and retired to her family home, which she had purchased in 1859 in Auburn, New York. And she lived to be, I believe, in her 90s. Yeah, 91. So shout out to Harriet Tubman. All right. She was a badass, a 5'2" badass who did not accept lit from anyone. So just, yeah. All right, Jason, you go ahead and give us your shout out.
Well, mine's a little bit of a different take. I mean, we're certainly gonna discuss a uniquely important figure in Black American history, Malcolm X. But what we're going to talk about here, sadly, and maybe not unexpectedly, is the revelation this last week that the New York Police Department and the FBI were complicit in his assassination. There was a letter released, and I'm gonna, I've got it. Let's see here. I guess I don't have it right now, but there was a letter that was released from a New York Police Department officer. He had written it around 10 years ago. He had not wanted it to be released until after his death. But he indicated a long, multi-year sort of operations to track Malcolm X and his associates, to try and sort of entrap them, to catch them doing something illegal. And then this ended up escalating into some people getting pulled off of duty and distracted the night that he was assassinated. And this was all for the purpose of clearing the line to assassinate him. So it is not unexpected in the history of the United States, where the racist capitalist government, the sort of the anti-left, the anti-communist. This is coming out of McCarthyism, coming out of J. Edgar Hoover's FBI operations, that were very interested in maintaining sort of a culture of fear against Black activist communities. This is not at all unsurprising, and yet it remains just devastating and tragic. So I think we need to recognize that, and I'm very interested in what follow-up investigations may be done on this, and in what atonement may come from it. And if we look at the history of atonement from the United States government, precious little, I would expect.
Yeah. Does anyone want to chime in?
Yeah, I was just with the revelation, it's very much on brand for the way the US government has treated Black radicals. Fred Hampton being another example. It's just, yeah, I mean, what really resonates with me with Malcolm X is he, in his autobiography, he talked about people being locked up in cages and saying how it changes people, and saying how it devastates lives. And he talked about how he wasn't totally against the idea of prisons, but he was against the idea of bars, because bars just change people.
Yeah.
And I think you can't have racial justice without having criminal justice reform. You can't with the incarceration rate in the United States, we can't get anywhere with this unless we seriously tackle incarceration in this country.
Yeah. Wow. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to say that I encourage people to find out about there's many amazing Black leaders, writers, creators, and Black history is not just, for February, and it's actually American history. And not only that, is Black history has led many of the progression that this country has experienced. So yeah, I just encourage everybody to, throughout the year, to learn about somebody.
All right, and now let's welcome Professor Christina Manzano. She is an astronomer. She teaches astronomy at Mount SAC. She is my professor. Thank you for joining on.
Thank you for having me. Very cool to be here.
So today we're all gonna talk about climate change. We recently had a very scary blizzard in Texas that ended up having people losing power. Their pipes had burst, and a few people actually passed away because of it. Christina, what are your thoughts on that? And what is your take on how we are acting on the climate crisis?
Oh no. Well, I feel like, of course, storms are getting worse. That is absolutely due to climate change. caused by humans. But what we're seeing right now in Texas is just a demonstration of the complete lack of ability to deal with these crises that are just going to continue to get worse. And it pains me because we consider the United States to be a first world country, but we're just seeing right now how unprepared we are to deal with disasters of this magnitude. And it's all because we're valuing profits over public safety and human life. Like if you look at this catastrophe and the powers that, or I guess the motivations behind the power companies, they're completely motivated by profit. And they'll even say it out loud, like, oh, we want to capitalize on the fact that now production is down, demand is up because everyone is cold and at home, and and the grid is strained. So now you see things like the price of electricity going up by 10,000%. And there's incentive for them to only produce when prices are that high. So, but the way it should be done is you should have power on reserve to prevent a blackout. But that's not as profitable as producing when the price is high. So, yeah, it's a shame. They've known about this for decades and did nothing to prepare for it. Things are just going to continue to get worse, and yeah, it frustrates me.
Go ahead, Jason.
I have a question. My name is Jason Call. I am a congressional candidate in Washington's 2nd District, very supportive of the Green New Deal and our need to tackle climate change. Some of the arguments that came out from the governor of Texas and other people in the Texas area actually had the nerve to blame this. It said something along the lines of, this is what happens when you start messing around with sustainable energy or the green. They wanted to blame it on the Green New Deal, which is obviously not even policy yet. But let's talk about that energy grid. How do we get, what are your thoughts on how we get an energy grid that can handle our needs sustainably and renewably? How do we, what is that process of being, like, you know, take the politics out of it? What's the phase out and phase in of getting renewable, sustainable energy?
Well, that's not really my field. So that, I feel like that would be more of an if we're going to take politics out of it, I would say that that's more of like an engineering question. And from the last time I took a class on this, which was over 10 years ago, I feel like the field has advanced a lot, and it feels like we're moving more towards solar is kind of like the leading thing that people are saying is what's going to be the number one.
So the real barrier is politics. That's,
yeah, I would say
really
so.
what it comes down to. Sure.
100%. Like the problem here is not even that they're using natural gas to heat homes. That's actually the most efficient way to heat a home. But the fact is that, or the problem here is that they knew that this infrastructure needed to be upkept, and it's not profitable for them to do it. They knew that they had to weatherize their systems, and they didn't because it cost money, and in fact, it's more profitable for them to have it fail and then overproduce, or not even overproduce, just produce only enough that people need to use their energy at specific times.
Yeah.
So,
so what you're really saying is we need to nationalize our entire energy systems and federally invest on upgrading all of them to be renewable and sustainable. I mean, that's just the answer.
Well, nationalize all utilities. You know, actually, let's talk about that. Anyone want to chime in about nationalizing utilities such as electricity, gas, water? Elizabeth, Robin, do you guys want to chime in?
I'm just going to say, I'm going to be real honest. I haven't been following climate change. I do believe that we need to be using more renewable sources. We need to make sure that we're being equitable in how we treat climate change, making sure our most vulnerable are being protected. But can we just define nationalizing utilities, please?
Yeah, so it would basically like Medicare for all, but all of our utilities, you know. So
Well, I want to push back on that because Medicare for all doesn't nationalize hospitals.
Oh, that's
The
true.
insurance part of it.
It's just like a mandated universal healthcare. Something close to it would be the NHS, like the UK. And I will say this, that what happened in Texas, what you saw coming out was that electric companies are making bank, like a lot of money. They were able to charge people like $10,000 just for 1 month's use of electricity. So they're very happy with this whole situation. They love it. They absolutely love it because they're able to just completely take advantage of people in a time of, like, you know, I'm sure there's laws on the books where you can't take advantage of a national disaster, but I'm not too sure.
Will they
I'm a bit vague on
enforce
that.
it?
I don't think that there are. Naomi
No,
would
and
not have
that's
written her book.
again, that's a problem, isn't it? You know, you allow a private corporation to basically take advantage of people in a great time of need. Like, what's the point of having these utilities when they don't work when you desperately need them to? Like, you know, like it's obviously doesn't work in the favor of people. So at least with nationalizing utilities, there is accountability in terms of, you know, because it's a public utility, and people have accountability towards the government. You know, you know, but when you have a private corporation, they don't really have any accountability. You know, it's just
and it's no surprise, having gone through Enron in the early 2000s, it's really no surprise that this would happen again. And you know, if we don't get a handle on the situation, it's going to happen again, and with increasing frequency as our climate conditions worsen. But I was extremely amused by Ted Cruz's response to the jacking up of prices, where he said, "Oh my goodness, this should never happen, that people should be gouged in a pandemic." And my response to him was, "So you agree capitalism sucks?" You know, right?
Elizabeth, you're about to say something.
Oh yeah, so just the nationalizing the utilities. I know in Northern California when the fires happened, I don't even know which fire, because there's been like 3 or 4 that I can remember from the past 5 years. But basically, PG&E also did a similar thing to what Texas did. The private utility company didn't safeguard the electrical wires, I guess, out in the more rural areas of Northern California. And then strong winds happen, or just natural stuff happens, and it knocks over these cables, and then it sparks the fire. So when that was happening over there in Northern California, they were talking about nationalizing the utilities companies, just because you find that utilities under private ownership is negligent. And when it's under private ownership, you know, in corporate hands, they do have to be accountable to somebody, which is their stakeholders, which is where it's not profitable to safeguard utilities. And nationalizing and putting it into the government's hands, or having them oversee it or regulate it, ensures that they are watching out for the public, the community's interest, that when strong winds occur or really cold winter occurs, that the people are going to be okay, and that these utilities, these basic necessities, are going to be able to provide light, warmth, whatever it is that
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Elizabeth, you're absolutely right about California, because that's what happened in Paradise. Like when they completely obliterated that whole place, and the responses I'm getting online with a lot of Democrats is, you don't, like, you know, you voted Republican, who cares about you? And like, people forget, like, California, even though it's supposed to be a very progressive state, we could have wildfires this summer, and it could completely obliterate whole towns, whole cities, because of these electrical faults and because of these problems with our utilities.
Now, Christina, go ahead.
Yeah, for Christina. So talking about the wildfires here in California, what do you think, what does a Green New Deal look for our state here?
You took the words right out of my mouth, girl.
And I love Mount SAC. I don't know if you ever met him, but Craig Peterson is actually the environmental science teacher over there at Mount SAC that taught me about climate change. Like 10 years ago.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'm brand new to Mount SAC. So, and I've started during the pandemic, so I never actually got to go to campus and meet everyone. So I'm really looking forward to one day when we can go back. I think they're thinking about it in the fall. But oh yeah. So anyway, what would a Green New Deal look like in California? Well, unfortunately, I've spent all of my time before this reading up about Texas. So I have like a bunch to say about Texas, weirdly, even though I've never
Hey,
been.
I mean, if you want to talk about Texas.
Oh yeah, no, I'll say a thing about Texas, but yeah, definitely wildfires are going to be our thing, right? So we really should be thinking about, you know, warm weather things, like wildfires. That's when things get really serious here. So one thing I would really love to see is not using prisoners to fight wildfires. That would be great. I would love that. I'm not sure.
I would love that. Yeah.
That is
Yes, or at
dystopian.
least-
That's so dystopian.
It's terrible, right?
And at the very least, letting them become firefighters after they get released from prison. Like, it's so bizarre. Like, they fight fires while they're in jail, and when they come out, they have all that experience and they can't become firefighters.
Well,
Total bullshit.
So the whole idea of using prisoners to fight wildfires, you can trace that all the way back to the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment says that there's no, you can't have any slavery unless if you are serving a crime.
Yeah.
So that's why for-profit prisons came up. That's why you have prison labor. And it's sickening. It's legal slavery. It's modern day slavery in the United States. And that's a whole other discussion for another day.
Yeah.
But Christina, you mentioned that you wanted to mention something about Texas earlier.
Yeah, so I was thinking also about, so we're dealing with some cold weather catastrophes, right? They didn't harden their systems against cold weather. They weren't prepared for like a blizzard. But something that Texas gets all the time is warm weather, right? And so the oceans are warming. That means that we're going to get more powerful hurricanes more frequently. And in fact, I believe it was Hurricane Harvey that made landfall over Houston a few years ago, and that caused a whole bunch of damage. And the thing is, they have to get ready for more intense storm surges. And there is a nuclear power plant that's sitting right up next to I believe it's a canal, not necessarily a river, but it's prone to storm surges. And if a really powerful storm surge comes through, it's going to pick up all of these like debris, shipping containers and stuff like that, and slam it into the nuclear power plant and send nuclear waste everywhere. And so this isn't to, you know, drum up hysteria over nuclear power, because actually I am a proponent of nuclear power to some extent. It's actually safer and less radioactive than
are you into
mining
the new
coal.
thorium reactors? The new thorium reactors to upgrade the nuclear power plant with grid with the thorium reactors? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, not specifically that. So what I was thinking about in this instance is that if the way that they're handling the power grid when dealing with an unexpected natural disaster, if this is any indication, then they're definitely not hardening up the nuclear reactor that they already have, making sure that it's safe from storm surges. Because if that thing goes out, that's going to be a huge problem. There's just going to be nuclear waste everywhere.
Yeah.
I was going to say, my dad actually works at a nuclear facility in UK, Sedgefield, and he was saying that the only issue with nuclear power is that they have no way of getting rid of nuclear waste, like at all. And the way they have to deposit it and deal with it is they have to encase it in like these large concrete like containers, but every so often they have to re-contain them. So you're having to put a container over a container over a container over a container because there's no way to actually get rid of it. And that's the only issue with nuclear power.
Space question. Can we just like launch that shit in the sun?
It's a little bit hard to launch something directly into the sun, but I always wonder about that. Like, why don't they shoot it into space? I don't know. I'm sure that could cause problems elsewhere. Also, actually, no. I had that one neuron go off, and you know what it said? It's expensive.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
expensive
it's
to shoot it in
expensive.
space. Of course, they're not going to do that. You know what's not expensive is letting it leak into the water.
Oh no.
I was gonna say it reminds me of a Futurama episode where they shoot the garbage into space. And
Oh yeah, and it comes back.
And it comes back and hurtles towards Earth.
Well, Christina, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you. You're a really good professor I've ever had. So I'm so glad that you have these opinions and you're able to share them on this platform that we created.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on and giving me a chance to rant about politics. I don't usually get to, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, if
Awesome.
you ever feel the need to, just come back.
Oh, if you ever need a scientist to weigh in on things, I'll do my best to brush up on that particular field beforehand. Yeah.
Nice.
Fantastic.
All right.
Nice.
Well, thank you so much. Do you have any like a website or like anything that you want to shout out?
Oh, let's see. I'm not very online. Well, okay, I do actually have something to shout out. I've been working in Riverside to get a Food Not Bombs branch going. So we've recently got a couple new connections so we can start doing regular services. And so we will be collecting donations on Fridays at the Unitarian Universalist Church in downtown Riverside. We collect donations of food of any sort, so it can be perishable or non-perishable, lightly used clothing, tents, stuff like that for the unhoused community. So we collect donations on the first Saturday and we distribute on the third Saturday of every month starting in March.
Well, that's great, y'all. If you
Nice.
if that interests you, please go ahead and check it out. Thank you so much, Christina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All right. And that concludes our episode of Okay Now What. Please tune in next week for another episode and just to stay on top of what's going on in America. And also, please check us out on social media. Our social media is in the description below. Give us a follow. Tell your friends about us. And if you're watching this on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. And we'll see you next week. Toodaloo.